For my creative project, I chose to explore the relationship between the brain and music. As we know, poetry challenges the brain to think, which engages many parts of the brain. With music, there are two aspects, lyric and instrumental. For my project, I chose to explore 4 of my favorite albums and translate how my brain feels listening to them. To preface my project, I want to talk about some research I conducted. Music can have a very large impact on the emotional and psychological effects on the listener, similar to the way poetry does. Music engages many regions of the brain. These regions become very active when music is introduced, which in turn evokes an emotional response from the listener. As we have learned from the class, memory is a very important aspect of one's identity. Music actually has a very strong link to memory and therefore is why it can evoke such a vivid emotional response. With this information now presented, I would like to talk about my artwork. The first album presented is Tell Me I'm Pretty by Cage the Elephant. To me, this album strengthens my own sense of femininity. I was a fan of this album when I was going through a hard time in my life and it helped me feel empowered. The music in this album is pretty, but it has some very strong lyrics. This is represented by the light color and the traditional but more feminine tattoos sketched throughout. I wanted to portray how strong this album makes me feel, but does not step on my female identity. With lyrics such as I'm not your punching bag, I was able to feel like I could take on the world and embrace being a woman. For my next album, I chose The Sound by the 1975. When listening to this album, my brain is filled with sparkles and pastels. The only thing I want to do when listening to this music is close my eyes and dance. To me, most of the songs on this album are very upbeat and about celebrating music and love. I feel very bright and happy when listening to this album, which is why I drew the color scheme I did. When this music is on, my anxiety seems to melt away and my brain is filled with happy colors. The third album that you see is called Currents by Tame Impala. This album is filled with a lot of what I would describe as futuristic, psychedelic synth sounds. This is why I included the very sharp drawings in my art that I did. When I close my eyes and listen to this album, this is a representation of what I see in my head. I included very bright and intense colors because that is how I portray the music in my mind. I would describe the album as having a lot of sharp sounds, but at the same time not being very chaotic. This is why I included a geometric shaped, but I did not arrange them in any uniform pattern. I wanted to portray the chaotic good that I feel this album creates. Now, the last album I put in my piece is titled Born by a band named Goose. When I play this record, I feel very happy and relaxed, like all the stress in my body has dissolved. The colors that I see in my head are very uniform and relaxing due to the very long instrumental jams that they include in their music. At the same time, the colors are also very bright. As someone who is into making music, I find their works very inspirational, which I hoped is portrayed by using the airbrush-like strokes, as I did in my painting. I see this album as a work of art, and that is why I painted it the way I did. As someone who has always had music be a very big part of their life, I really enjoyed diving deeper into my consciousness in order to try and make my thoughts visible on paper. When listening to this music, I felt that the visual areas of my brain were very engaged, which is very interesting to try and articulate in this project. Music is such a beautiful media that can affect everyone's consciousness in their own unique and exciting way. I hope more people explore this topic and maybe hopefully discover a new love for music they never knew they had before.